Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Wednesday night episode of Bright Spots. I am so excited that you are here. We've got a great show planned for tonight, a great guest that I can't wait for you to hear her story, her passions, all about all that she has done in her life. Just really an incredible story. And we will get to that. But first, I want to brag a little bit, I guess. My baby sister has a farm in Eastern North Carolina, and she has been recognized by Country Living Magazine as one of the top 30 mazes, fall mazes to visit during the fall months, one of the top destinations in the country, and she is number two. And I am so proud of her that I just wanted to share a little bit of her farm with you. So I have on cue here her commercial for this year's farm that is playing down in North Carolina on television, and I am just so incredibly proud of her. I can't even begin to tell you. So let me show you this commercial, and we're going to get some of this stuff out of the way so you can see it in the full screen there. And here we go. Maze praise the song. And maze praise. What about that, right? I am just so proud. And yes, that was her singing the theme song for her Maze Craze. And she has put the image of Lucas Nelson in her maze. Now, Lucas Nelson is the son of the great Willie Nelson, and he's an up and coming country artist. And they're going to have the band out there, I guess. There's plans for that to happen. And she's getting all sorts of attention because she has put his image in the maze, along with his band, the name of his band, POTR, I think it is, and his guitar. So when you're looking at the maze, his guitar is the children's maze. And then the picture of his face and his likeness, his cowboy hat, is the adult maze, and that covers about 13 acres of their farm. So it's a big maze. So if you are near Eastern North Carolina, or you are looking for a getaway this fall and you want to go down there, kids, adults, it doesn't matter. There's fun for everyone there. And she doesn't do the boo scary maze. It's actually a lot of good family fun. None of the gory, scary Halloween stuff. It's just good family fun. She has live music on the weekends. I mean, you just can't beat it. It is a great place to go. So it's right outside of Wilmington, North Carolina, in Hallsboro, North Carolina, just a few minutes from Lake Waccamaw. So if you are in that neighborhood, or if you're looking for a place to go this fall, be sure you check out Maze Craze at Galloway Farms in Hallsboro, North Carolina. That proprietor is Alma Lee Galloway. And she is my baby sister. So be sure you check that out. And you can find her on Facebook, Maze Craze. Just look up Maze Craze NC and mazecrazenc.com. That is her website. So make sure you check that out if you're looking for a place. Maybe you're driving through. Our guest might be driving through there on her way to North Carolina. I'm not sure if she's driving or flying, or I'm sorry, on her way to New York. So she is coming to us straight from Florida today. And she is going to be heading back home, she tells me, to New York. So this evening's guest is Giorgina, or just Gina, Ligori. And I hope I'm saying that right. And if not, you can correct me when you come on the air. Gina is a psychologist, and she has worked in New York as a TV producer, and she's a writer. She's written several books, and they are on Amazon, and she's going to tell us a little bit about those. But her favorite thing is working with teens and tweens. And she also wrote an interactive book for parents and grandparents called Creating the Creative Child, 365 creative activities to do with children. And these go way beyond finger painting. I mean, this lady is creative from the word go, folks, and she has pivoted her career multiple different directions. And I would just love for you to give her a Bright Spots welcome to the studio. Ladies and gentlemen, Giorgina Ligori. Welcome, my friend.
I'm going to tell you something funny. Growing up in New York City, no one had a problem pronouncing my name. The only time that they did is the 2 years I spent in North Carolina.
So, is that right?
That's absolutely right. In fact, my whole life, everyone that I knew called me Georgina. And when I got to North Carolina and they started calling me Georgianne, I said, listen, can you call me Gina? So that caused me to shorten it. So it's Georgina or Gina, either one is fine. So, but it's very funny because it was North Carolina that did have a problem
How funny. How funny. Well, I lived in North Carolina for a short period of time, but I've spent most of my time in Ohio. But my family are all North Carolinians. So I guess you could say I'm the Yankee in the bunch because I came north of the Mason Dixon line. So, Gina, tell us a little bit about you that I haven't already shared. Give us your elevator speech. Who is Gina Ligori?
Well, I've worn three hats my whole life. The thing that I'm most proud of is I have four amazing young adult kids, and so everything I did that was center stage. So I am a psychologist. I do have two graduate degrees in psychology and counseling, and my specialty is women's studies and teenagers. And so because I'm so involved with teenagers, I also do parenting groups. But I was head supervisor of a drug and alcohol prevention program in New York City. And what we did is we trained counselors to work with at-risk kids. And New York is home. I'm working at a Fort Lauderdale now, but New York is home. And if you're lucky enough to be in New York, I will tell you that the programs that they have for children and parents far outweigh anything that they have in Florida or North Carolina, because I lived in North Carolina for 2 years also. So New York is a very lucky that way, and it's throughout the whole state. They have great benefits for parents and students. So that is one of the things I do is the counseling. I'm also a writer. I have 3 books on Amazon. Working on number 4. My 4th book will be my first mystery, so I'm very excited about that. And I'm also a certified teacher and guidance counselor, and I was trained by Cambridge University in England to teach American high school students Cambridge writing classes. So I do a lot of things, and I'm very lucky because I love everything I do. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is I've been doing women's groups for 19 years now, and my women's group in New York has been going on for 19 years. The Florida one has been going on for about 10. And by the way, if you are in Florida or if you're interested, I do have a Facebook page for that group. It's called Woman to Woman with Gina, and it is on Facebook if you're interested. We do have people from California and other places. But what I'm very proud of is I joined a group called Stitch. Stitch is a group that is organized. I have nothing to do with, again, I'm not promoting them because I'm part of it, but I joined it because of COVID and felt like I was missing my social life. So if you are 50 or over, which I admit to, you can learn French, you can learn how to play the ukulele, you can take art classes, dance classes, play word games. It is fabulous, and it's international. It started in Sydney, Australia, but it's all over the world. And so I joined, and I've learned so many things through them. But I noticed that they did not have a women's group. And I think that women talking is so important. So I asked Andrew, who is the head of Stitch, why don't you have a women's group? And he said, go for it. We started with 2 people, 4 people. We have over 190 people now that are part of this international group. And they're in Australia, in Scotland, all through the United States. And I think it's vitally, vitally important for women to speak and share together. So I'm very proud of that. That's been amazing for me.
So tell us, in your bio, it mentions that you were a TV producer. How do you go from being a TV producer to psychology, or did they run side by side?
Well, actually, I was a psychologist first, and I had a full program in New York between the drug prevention, but also I had a full practice, a full psychology practice. And to try to make a long story short, I wrote a book in Italian with a man whose son was dyslexic called My Son Can't Read. We wrote that in Italy. And 2 years later, he called and he said that there was an Italian magazine that was looking for someone to go to Africa, to go to Morocco for 2 years because they were doing a whole series on women of North Africa. And the requirements were very, very specific. They needed someone who could write, someone who was a psychologist, and someone who spoke Italian. Luckily, I could do all of those things. And so I spent 2 years in Morocco. And I loved the writing. I loved it. And so on the plane going home, I said to my husband, I don't want to do psychology for a while. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to write for television. He said, what? I said, well, yeah, because I thought about it and I want to write television commercials because you need a psychology background, an art background, and you have to know how to write. And I've got all of those things. So I walked into a TV studio and sat there for 2 weeks, just sat there. And then one day the director came out and he said, are you waiting for me? And I said, yeah. And he said, why? And I said, I want to work here. What I didn't know is he was getting 100 resumes a week from people who had TV experience. I had no experience. He said, you have 5 minutes. And so I went in his office and he said, why would I hire you? And I said, because I'm very smart. And he started laughing. And I said, no, I really am. I learn very fast. And that is how I started writing for television. And I think that's a great story because sometimes there's a beauty in naivete. There's a beauty in innocence. I had no idea that I couldn't get this job, even though when I found out later how many resumes he was getting, that sometimes you just have to go in there and try it. And so, you know, when I came down to Florida, there was no television production, and I started working on the newspaper. And what I realized was I missed interacting with people because when I was working as a reporter, I was basically in the car all day long. And so I went back into the schools as a counselor. So I juggled all of those things my whole life.
Wow, that's an incredible story, Gina. So what types of conversations do you have in what is the purpose of the women's groups? I mean, you're coming together and you're having conversations. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like. What does that feel like and why should someone want to do that?
I get, honestly, in my whole life, I have never gotten the feedback like I have gotten from this women's group that I'm doing through Zoom, both the one that's national and the one that's international. Women need to talk. Women need a safe place. And that is what I keep hearing. Women say to me, I never told anybody this. I never shared this with anybody. I didn't think people could understand. And the weight that comes off when you are able to share your heart and your soul and your mind and your feelings with people who are going to be supportive and listen and love you anyway is a gift that we give each other every single week. And I have people who have just opened up and you know, women who are 35, women who are 50, women who are 70. I have a woman who is 80 something who said that I never shared that with anybody. And what her big secret was is that she was tending a very ill husband. And when he died, she said it felt like a relief for him and for me. And I was so ashamed of that feeling. I could never tell anybody that. And another woman who's absolutely physically gorgeous and lives in this fabulous apartment in New York City. And you look at this woman and think, how could she have any problems? And just last week, she said, I feel like everything I do gets messed up. I feel like everything I do is not okay. I feel like a fraud. And this woman who was, I hate to say it, but there was another woman in the group who's practically catatonic, who never speaks, yelled out, Susan, I love you. And everyone in that room was stunned by the fact that this other woman finally spoke, but the fact that the outpouring of love for this woman who felt like she was a screw up, she wrote me after and she said, you changed me and you changed my life. And I had not said anything, but what I had done was allowed a platform where people felt safe. And that's why these women's groups are so important. So
So,
important.
so would you categorize them as support groups? And if so, what type of women migrate to your group?
Um, it's definitely a support group. It's not confrontational at all. It's not therapy. I'm not doing my therapy thing there. I'm just one of the women. I'm a facilitator. I will ask questions and I will help people come out, but I'm not doing therapy and I'm not allowing any kind of confrontation. The women who gravitate to these groups, and I hate to sound like a snob, I do believe that they are above average in terms of intelligence. I think that they tend to be a little bit more educated, not all, but most tend to be a little bit more educated where there's not as much fear. And I think that's what education does. It allows you to understand that this is a place where I can feel good. And I think that people who have been in school tend to be a little bit more comfortable in group settings and just talking. But the thing that is so important about these groups is that you can never assume. You don't look at somebody who's beautiful and say, "Oh well, she doesn't have to have my problem." And then she starts talking, and you realize she has at least as many insecurities as the rest of us, maybe more. So I think it's very important that we listen to each other and that we support each other. And not only that, but some of the women have made their best friends. Because one of the things I encourage is I say, listen, if you hear somebody say something that you really like, if you say, she thinks like me, she speaks like me, she's got my issues, we can do a private chat. And you can go and say to her, can we speak privately after this group? Can I call you? And some of the best friends have been amazing that were made like that.
So we have a comment from Karen in the group. She says, women need women, friends they can confide in. And I think that's just what you're talking about with these online groups that you are having. And I think she's absolutely right. So we're going to shift gears just a little bit. You also work a considerable amount with teens and tweens, and then parents and grandparents. And I'm very intrigued by your book about creative children.
I'm going to show it off. I'm going to show it off because I'm very, very proud of this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, creating a creative child, and that is my granddaughter. I'm very proud of.
How wonderful!
But the reason I wrote the book is because I think that we are so limited in what we think of as being creative. So yes, I have an art background, and I talk about Play-Doh but there's so many ways to be creative. For example, one of the things I suggest is taking a child to a ethnic neighborhood and bringing them into a food store there and asking the owner something that he would suggest that we try. Maybe the child had never had lychee nuts before, or how can we make lasagna, or I love pho. I just love it. So what can we go home and make? And so the creativity is so full because you're teaching the child how to cook. You're cooking with the child. That makes a wonderful bonding experience. But you also learn that people who speak with accents, they also have things that you can learn from. We don't all have to be Irish, or we don't all have to be Italian, or whatever. That there are cultures that have wonderful things that they can share with you. So that is one of the things that I suggest about doing. And I think creativity is it's an old saying, but thinking outside the box is. I had a mother who told me that she was upset with her son's teacher who gave him a failing grade on a picture. Well, first of all, how do you fail a child doing a drawing? But the reason that the teacher failed the child was because he didn't make the bark of the tree brown and he didn't make the leaves green. And I said to her, I want you to write a note to the teacher. And I want you to tell the teacher that I have seen green skies, and I have seen purple leaves, and I have seen white bark on trees. And if you're really going to be limiting people like that, we'd never have Picasso. So I just it bothers me that our children, and it's one of the things I see with teenagers all the time. The problem with schools is that they're teaching children who and what, and not why and how. So the children can go through a story and they can underline something like, what color was the house? Well, they can all answer that. Blah, 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 blah. The house was yellow. Got it. But if you ask a child, I'll give you a real example that happened. There was a story that teenagers in one of the classes I was working with had read. And the question was, I think it was Edgar Allan Poe. I don't remember, but some writer. After he sold his first book, he moved down to Georgia. The question was, what part of the country did he live in before? And this boy in a gifted class raised his hand and said, oh, it doesn't tell you that. So he was ready to put NA, not applicable, or not here. I said, excuse me, can you draw a map of the United States, even just a general map of the United States? Okay, yeah. Do it on the board. Show me where Georgia is. He does. I said, he moved down to Georgia. Where did he live before? Miss LaGuardia doesn't tell us. I was so horrified by that. And it's not the child's fault. It's that they are not taught to think. They are taught to underline and circle. And so I wrote this book, Created the Creative Child, because if they're not getting in school, you're going to give it to them. You're going to show them how to read music, and you're going to teach them how to use a camera. One of the most fun things to do is just take a kid anywhere and get him one of these little throwaway cameras and have him take pictures of whether it's the Statue of Liberty or the Golden Gate Bridge, and come home and use those pictures as an incentive to write a little story about the Golden Gate Bridge or the Empire State Building. And I that's the kind of things I have in the book.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And that book is available on Amazon as well.
Yes.
Gina? That sounds, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter and an 11-month-old granddaughter. So you can bet that book is going to join my collection. That is just fabulous. And the inspiration to write the book, I think, is just as fabulous as the book itself, the idea for the book. So thank you for writing it. Thank you for helping us grandmas and parents think outside the box and be creative in ways we may not have thought of. As an amateur photographer, I love the idea of the throwaway camera and just take pictures and let's write a story about it. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I love it. Thank you. So, of all the things that you've done and are doing, what's your favorite thing to do? What's your favorite group to work with, Gina?
Oh, that's really hard. I love my women's group, but I think the most satisfying is working, believe it or not, with middle school age kids. And I work with everything from 4th grade. I taught psychology on the college level. But to me, the most important work that I've done is with middle school students. And the reason for that is when kids are in middle school, first of all, they need us more than any other age. They are such lost little souls. People in middle school can be harsher than anywhere else, and they care so much, and they're so delicate. And they're not getting the kind of counseling that they should be getting. So many kids are falling by the wayside. And I love the fact that they're old enough to be smart and yet young enough that they're flexible. If you ever are going to change somebody and turn them into the right direction, you are going to work with a 14 and 15-year-old. And the gratitude and the fact that somebody cares about them and listens to them. I get calls from people and emails from kids 10 years later that still remember things that they learned in my class and repeat things back to me that I don't remember. I'm like so surprised. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I really say that? That is so cool. And they said that guided me. That guided me. That thing guided me. And so I think if I have to pick even more than my women's group and how much I love writing, because I love writing, it's working with middle school kids. That was the most gratifying.
I think, and I would think this might be true for you since you are in the profession now, that we all have a teacher from our childhood that made that indelible mark on our heart, on our brain, on our soul. I know for me, it was an English teacher who not only taught me English, but she taught me a lot about life.
Mhm.
And that was even more important than diagramming sentences. It was more important than the actual work of English. But she taught me life, and her name was Gladys Glikes, and she has since passed away. But she will always be remembered in my mind as the teacher who made me think. She made me think about things and didn't just teach me to draw circles and lines, but she made me think. So, did you have a teacher that really impacted you in such a way that made you want to go into teaching?
No, I'll be truthful.
No.
No, no. The person that inspired me, I was very blessed because I had an Aunt Lily. My Aunt Lily was the most amazing woman ever. Um, and this is a woman who hadn't finished school when she should have because my dad was the youngest of 8 children and they all had to work. And my dad was the only one that was able to finish school because he was the youngest and they helped him. But all of the other people in the family had to stop school and go to work. But Lily went back and she earned not only her degree, but she earned her master's, traveled all over the world, and just was the most amazing woman. Took me to my first ballet, took me to my first opera, took me to my first foreign film, took me to off-Broadway shows, opened the world to me. And my parents were very nice, but they were sort of conservative in terms of their, you know, movie theaters and things like that. But she really opened the world to me. And I was able to do that for my own children. And I think another advantage that I have, and I'm very, very snobby about this, I love the fact that I grew up in New York City. I love what advantage I was able to give my kids. My daughter thought that everyone went to the Holography Museum on Saturdays. I mean, there we were, you know, uh, ballet at the Met and things like that. And I used New York. I mean, my kids knew every museum. So, but it wasn't in school. And one of the things that I have to say is when I took my SATs for college, I scored a perfect score on the English, and I got a letter from Mensa saying you couldn't have gotten an 800 on the SATs unless you were super bright, and we'd like you to take the Mensa test. Well, I took the Mensa test and I passed it, and I have a Mensa card, which I'm very proud of. And the person that interviewed me for Mensa said, "Well, with your IQ, weren't you in gifted classes?" And I said, "No, never." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "I think it was because the way I dressed." And he thought I was joking. I said, "No, when I was in high school, I was a hippie kid. I actually had an ankle bracelet with bells on it. And so I did not look like, in quotes, the gifted kid. So they never tested me. I never was tested for gifted." And I think that was sort of funny. But I liked school. I didn't have a lot of problems in school. But I don't think I realized how smart I was until I got into college. I love college. That's when I really bloomed. That was important.
Wow. That's great. For some reason, I can picture you with an ankle bracelet with bells on it. I think you might still be a little bit of a hippie.
My daughter goes shopping with me, and she looks at me and says, "No, mom, no."
How funny. How funny. Well, Gina, it has been a delight to have you on Bright Spots. Have we missed anything that you wanted to make sure you shared?
I would just like to say my whole name because I have the easiest email in the world. My email is Giorgina, and because I have the Italian spelling of that name, which is Giorgina, it is simply Georgina at AOL. If you have any questions about the books, the women's group, or me, or Georgina with two I's, no E at AOL, and you got me. So, Lori, thank you so much. This is great. I love it.
You're very welcome. And you can also visit brightspots.com and click on Gina's picture it will be in the previous guests box now, but click on Gina's picture and it'll take you straight to her profile on brightspots.com, brightspotsov.com. And you can, I'll put some links up there that'll take them directly to your Amazon books. If you're interested in purchasing her books, please watch for that later today, and you can go straight there and buy them there. I will also put your email up there for them as well, Gina.
You are terrific. Thank you so much. And I love what you're doing for women. It's so important, and keep it up. And you're lovely. And I do drive, and we might just stop because we will be going. I have a friend that lives in Wilmington, so we very well might stop off. I love the idea. I love it.
There you go. Go see Maze Craze.
Thank you.
When are you headed to New York?
I'm going for Thanksgiving and staying through Christmas, so I'm excited.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, enjoy your time at home.
I will.
Thank you. Well, folks, that ends another episode of Bright Spots. I am so thankful that you joined us this evening, and I invite you back next week. My guest will be Paula Kramer. Paula Kramer was on the last show of the second season with our panel discussion, but she will be doing a solo appearance this time next week, Wednesday at 7 o'clock, right here on Bright Spots. I hope you'll come back and join us. Have a great night. Enjoy this beautiful weather that we're having here in the Ohio Valley or wherever you're tuning in from. God bless you and stay safe.